Hey everybody, Jay Widener here, reading from the book A Monument to the End of Time. And today we are on chapter 9, section 5, Inca Caves and the Cross at Urcos. When Pizarro learned of the Inca in 1526 by by intercepting a strange craft far out in the Western Ocean loaded with gold and silver trade objects, the throne of Tawanatissio was occupied by the 11th Inca since the unification of the four quarters, Huayna Huapac. He was crowned in 1493, the year a corrupt pope divided the New World between the Spanish and the Portuguese and lived out his long and illustrious reign in blissful ignorance of history's ticking clock. When word reached him of the strangers probing the borders of his empire, the Inca was in Quito, consolidating his conquest of what is now Ecuador and thinking of pushing on into Colombia. And then the Spaniards' secret weapon attacked. No, and then the Spanish secret weapon struck. The pandemic that devastated Mexico and Central America arrived, either with Pizarro or overland through Colombia, and burst upon the 20 million inhabitants of the Inca Empire with a lethal effect. Half the population died, including the Inca Pachacutiyamki, an Inca noble writing a century later, described the Inca vision. Quote, and when he turned to the sea with his entourage, there was seen at midnight, as if surrounding him, 1,000,000 people, living souls of those about to die in the pestilence, begin to die, unquote. Wanya Ofak and his son have an heir died within a few days. Had it not been for this plague, Pizarro would have faced a united and powerful foe with a wily and battle-tested king at the helm. It is unlikely that he would have made much of a showing with only 200 men, even armed with muskets, against such might as the Inca Empire had just fielded in Ecuador. But the Inca was far from the center, and disaster occurred. After the plague, to compound the problem, fighting broke out between the Inca's two surviving sons, Huashar, in control of Cusco, and Atahualpa in the north, fought it out for the succession while the Spaniards moved into the valley of Peru and built settlements. Atahualpa, after he had established himself on the throne, investigated the Spaniard settlement and concluded that they posed little problem. In the old days of the Inca, this might have been true. But Atahualpa chose to negotiate with the barbarians and so was captured and held for ransom. When the Spaniards saw the amount of gold available to the Inca, they killed him, launched a palace revolt, and marched on Cusco in the name of Atahualpa's son, Manco. The Spaniards played on the divisions caused by the Civil War, which, along with disease, had decimated the army. By 1533, they were in control of Cusco. Their puppet ruler, Manco, revolted in 1536, but by then it was too late. Too many Spaniards and too many guns, faced by a declining population and a disorganized army, led to final disaster. Manco retreated up Machu Picchu far into the Andes and formed his own neo-Inca state, which survived for another 2 centuries. The Inca mined the gold Pizarro coveted in the Andes and used it in ceremonial ornaments and to line the walls of their palaces. They also coated their great religious centers with large plates of pure gold. The most famous of these was, of course, located in Cusco. The original building has disappeared, and a cathedral had been built over the old Inca foundation. In fact, most of the city of Cusco is built on Inca foundations that are hundreds of years old. With no mortar or concrete, these people were able to build stone edifices that have stood the test of time. The cathedral, called Santo Domingo, is a decrepit and dark place. The old temple palace, which once occupied the same place, was called the Temple of the Sun, or the Korean Concha in the Inca language. The magnificent building that this cathedral replaced can only be imagined now. Its walls were coated with thick plates of gold. The stories say that huge circular object made of pure gold called the disk of the sun sat in its center. This disk was said to represent the central sun of the cosmos and was many inches thick, covered with many precious jewels. It is said that when it reflected the light of the sun, it was transformed. The Inca believed that the light became so pure that the people in the temple were physically transformed. The Inca believed that the light became so pure that the people of the temple were physically transformed. The original Inca temple was much bigger than the cathedral that occupies the present spot. Once the Temple of the Sun, as it was known, was connected to the Temple of the Moon and the nearby complex of Sacsayhuaman by a series of underground tunnels. Excuse me. After the conquest, Pizarro heard rumors from the remaining Inca that there was a vast subterranean tunnel system under the Andes. He had heard from the Indians that these tunnels were filled with gold and jewels hidden by Atahualpa's queen, and the Inca queen had successfully hidden all of the tunnel openings from the Spanish. Cieza de Leon states in his Chronicles of Peru, written in 1555, quote, if, when the Spanish entered Cusco, they had not committed other tricks, had not too soon executed their cruelty in putting Atahualpa to death, I do not know how many great ships would have been required to bring such treasures to Old Spain. It is now lost in the bowels of the earth and remains so because those who buried it are now dead, unquote. Perhaps the most aggravating part of any examination of the history of Peru is that it is all written by the Spanish. The Inca people never really got much of a chance to preserve their culture. Pizarro and his band of men were brilliant at the goals of genocide, murder, and treachery. The voices of the Inca have been stilled and their secrets forgotten in the sudden strike of Spanish sword, gun, and horse. But the rumors of vast tunnels persist, inflamed by the legends of lost Inca gold, and perhaps even the disk of the sun itself that lies waiting to be found in some cave in the Andes. Although her trip is much in dispute, Madame Blavatsky claimed that she went to Peru in the mid-1800s. On her trip, she met a mysterious Italian who knew many of Peru's secrets. Through a complex series of petroglyphs and other signs, the Italian had found one of the entrances to the infamous Peru Inca tunnel system. He had also made a detailed map of the tunnels, as he claimed to have walked the entire system. According to the madam, she and the Italian visited the tunnels. This is what she had to say. Quote, when Cusco was the capital of Peru, it contained a temple of the sun, famed far and near for its magnificence. It was roofed with thick plates of gold, and the walls were covered with the same precious metal. The cave troughs were also of solid gold. In the west wall, the architects had contrived an aperture in such a way that when the sunbeams reached it, it focused them inside the buildings. Stretching like a golden chain from one sparkling point to another, they encircled the walls, illuminating the grim idols and disclosing certain mystic signs at other times invisible. It was only by understanding these hieroglyphs, identical with those which may be seen to this day on the tomb of the Incas, that one could learn the secret of the tunnels and its approaches. Among the latter was one in the neighborhood of Cusco, now masked beyond discovery. This leads directly into an immense tunnel which runs from Cusco to Lima, and then, turning southward, extends into Bolivia. At a certain point, it is intersected by a royal tomb. Inside the sepulchral chamber are cunningly arranged two doors, or rather two enormous slabs, which turn upon pivots and close so tightly as to be only distinguishable from the other portions of the sculptured walls by secret signs, whose key is in the possession of the faithful custodians. One of the turning slabs covers the southern mouth of the Limnian tunnel, the other, the northern one, of the Bolivian corridor, unquote. The tunnel system supposedly travels underground for hundreds of miles. Who built it remains a mystery. Madame Blavatsky says that the tunnels are shaped like a trapezoid, and that they have a peak on the top of the ceiling that then slopes downwards as the walls widen. She drew a map from memory of the one that her Italian friend possessed. It's supposedly still in the Theosophical Library in India, although a recent inquiry disclosed that the map is now missing. It is interesting that the shape of the tunnels is very close to the shape of the peculiar A's in the panel 4 of the pedestal on the Cross of Henday. This is also the same panel that Paul Meverill associates with caves. Panel 4 of Diala's Inca symbols also features caves in the mountains near Cusco. We knew that we were closing in on the place of refuge. It only remained to find it in the ground. The city of ancient Cusco is laid out in the shape of a puma, which is a South American mountain lion. The main part of the old city lies within the animal's torso, but the face of the puma and the nose are both part of the Sacsayhuaman complex, which towers high above the city. The eternal giant stonework of Sacsayhuaman echoes down through the centuries. What is left today tells only a tiny part of the story of these magnificent monuments and the unknown people who built them. The complex at Sacsayhuaman must have been huge at one time. Here, ancient plumbing and foundations for buildings can be seen, but it is only in the mind's eye that one can reconstruct the magnificence of the center. There are several tunnel openings in the complex, but they appear to have been sealed up about 20 to 30 feet in. In his book, Jungle Paths and Inca Ruins by Dr. William Montgomery McGovern writes about Sacsayhuaman, quote, "Near the fortress, Sacsayhuaman, are several strange caverns reaching far into the earth. Here, altars to the gods of the deep were carved out of the living rock, and the many bones scattered about tell of the sacrifices which were offered up there." Unquote. There are caves, just as the inscription at the Cross of Henday suggests, in the cliffs above Sacsayhuaman at one of the highest places above Cusco. Although they are natural, it is obvious that major parts of the interior of the caves have been carved out by humans. Not much is known about these caves, except that the Quechua have used them for ancient ceremonies for centuries. No one knows who carved out these caves. As far as we can tell, no one has done any archaeological study of them. They could very likely be safety zones for an ancient catastrophe. The area around the caves is interesting as the caves themselves. Nearby are the ancient remains of a small city. This extremely old site is sculpted and carved in such a way as to reveal that it was once an incredibly beautiful ceremonial or spiritual center. Avenues and the foundations of buildings are laid out in the ground. Water pipes made of clay for plumbing are still visible. Okay, so I'll show you. These are 4 pictures I took of the caves. You can see they've been kind of carved out and manufactured, and they're quite interesting. All right. Less obvious is the number of sculpted animal effigies that have been carved into the rocks. The figures of snakes, pumas, and monkeys are still discernible despite the erosion. These carvings and statues are so old that many of the features have disappeared under the forces of wind and rain. Only faint traces of this once magnificent site remains. The cross at Henday, which is over 3,000 miles and a vast ocean away, points to a cave in Cusco, Peru. Once the trek is made and enough questions are asked among the local Quechua population, the fabulous and forgotten site becomes more interesting. One has to wonder if the caves aren't an homage or a tribute to the people who used them to survive the great catastrophe. Are they the ones who built the gigantic tunnel system that allegedly runs under the Andes? One thing is for sure. The inscription on the cross points to a cave in Cusco, Peru, and these caves at Cusco do exist. It is also true that these same caves are held sacred by the local remnants of the Inca Indians by virtue of the large piles of melted ceremonial candle wax that is found everywhere inside the caves. Our guide, a local Quechua, told us that there are many ceremonies in these caves at night. He also said that the caves, although unknown to foreign tourists, are quite well known to the Quechua people. Many of the local Indians make pilgrimages to these caves at least once a year. When he was asked why these caves were so important, he shrugged his shoulders and said, quote, "White people do not care for the earth in the same way that we do. When we grow our food, we always ask Mother Earth for help. These caves are inside our mother. They are closer to her soul. So we go there to talk to her and to ask her for help," unquote. Several of our questions are answered by the discovery of these caves. They are very old, they are still hold a deep significance to the local people, and they are in old Cusco. That is the Cusco that is shaped like a puma. In fact, the caves and the ceremonial complex are near the tip of the nose of the puma, as if the animal was pointing his entire body at them. This suggests Merville's Catman breath image, which he attributes to Kathmandu in Nepal. It actually fits the pattern on the ground in Cusco much more closely. It is possible that the caves referred to in the Latin inscription are not these caves above Cusco, then they are a signpost pointing toward the infamous secret tunnel system that supposedly runs under the Andes. If this is so, then we'll have to wait until someone finds an opening to the legendary tunnel system. As far as can be discerned, the openings, if there are any, are forever covered up. They will likely never be opened again, no matter what Madame Blavatsky found. But we still have one clue from the Cross of Henday to check. The inscription, and Dr. Del Prado had told us of a strange cross at Urcos, about 20 miles south of Cusco. The last piece of the mystery was the secret of this second cross. And there's a picture of the cross at Urcos. Pick that. That's the cross there. It's wide angle of it. Urcos is a small and poverty-stricken town in the Andes, remembered by history only for its role in Manco Inca's rebellion. Every Sunday, the local farmers make their way down the steep mountain paths with sacks of freshly picked fruits, vegetables, and coca leaves to sell at the outdoor market. There's a beautiful mountain lake next to the town. The cross at Urcos sits at the mouth of this body of water, appropriately called Lake Urcos. No one knows who built the cross of Urcos. It is prominently displayed sitting on top of a 15-foot high stone hill-like construct. One must walk up the sides of the steep construct to reach the cross, which sits on top. However, the cross that can be seen now in Urcos is not the original one that sat on the promontory. In perhaps the most heartbreaking part of this investigation, we found that the old cross at Urcos was missing. The only thing left was its base, to which a newer cross had been affixed. The base of the old cross is extremely eroded and must be centuries old. The new cross is recent, perhaps less than 50 years old, and unadorned. No one knows how the old cross was broken or who took it away. The locals say that there's always been a cross there. They say that the symbol of the cross was extremely important to their culture. Indeed, crosses, as we saw in the imagery of the four united quarters, were a key concept in Inca tradition. However, the information, if there was any, on the cross at Urcos has been destroyed. One has to wonder if the republication of the Mystery of the Cathedrals, with the additional chapter on the cross of Hendaye, could have hurried the destruction of the cross at Urcos. Judging from the erosion, this new cross is very recent. Could someone have discovered the secret at Hendaye and gone to Urcos, then destroyed the path behind them by getting rid of the cross? It is very likely that the caves found above Cusco are the caves referred to in the inscription on the Hendaye cross. If the Andean tunnel system does exist, it may be integral to understanding the importance of the inscription and the secret of the apocalypse. Excuse me. There have been many rumors in occult circles for at least 100 years back that there is a secret school of philosophers and sacred scientists somewhere in the Andes Mountains. George Hunt Williamson came out with a strange book written in the 1960s called Secret of the Andes. In this curious volume, Williamson describes meeting an enlightened school of advanced masters living somewhere in the Andes. This group was known as the Brotherhood of the Seven Rays. They claimed to be an ancient society that was devoted to protecting the secret of the ages. Author and adventurer David Hatcher Childress has studied these rumors and believes them to be true. He claims that he has actually been inside the massive Andean tunnel system. There are even rumors that Fulcanelli joined the great inventor Marconi in the Andes Mountains in the mid-1930s. These rumors say that the two geniuses felt that the world was slipping into fascism and they wanted no part of it, especially when it came to creating weapons from their own research and work. The turn of events in the modern world did not set well, and so they joined forces and went to Peru. They founded a secret society devoted to sacred science and alchemy. Childress goes so far as to say that UFO technology may have come out of the school. Far from being created off-planet, these flying devices may have been invented by this group of renegade scientists. According to Jacques Vallée, a noted UFO researcher, most of the UFOs reported in the world originate in South America. That's still true to this day. There are so many stories around Cusco of mountain travelers and backpackers stumbling upon strange white men in weird robes. One has to wonder if the original cross at Urcos was not pointing towards this school. Is it possible, if the great secret that once you had successfully deciphered the Hendaye cross, it would send you to Peru? Once at Urcos, the student would find this cross, which was very likely had symbols engraved on it, and that would give them further information. One obvious effect of the inscription on the cross of Hendaye is that many people interested in symbols in the occult world would translate it and then head off to Peru. This group of Chileans, or believers in the coming apocalypse, if they are still active in the Andes, would then sift through the many travelers and visitors and contact those they thought worthy. In this way, they would be slowly gathering a group of enlightened souls from around the world into one spot. With the knowledge of the secret tunnel system, this group of seekers would then be safe during a disaster of celestial magnitude. This group of self-selected souls would be the cultural, spiritual, and physical seeds for the world to come. The Latin inscription is attempting to tell the few who will understand to come to Peru and become part of the coming golden age. Much more research is going to have to be done in order to fully understand what happened in the past in this strange country, or whether it plays a part in the future. It could very well be that this is the only land where the catastrophe does not reach, as Fulcanelli says. The tunnel system, the caves, secret schools for initiates, missing crosses, and much more can only give tantalizing hints of what may lie at the root of what really happened in Peru. If it is the refuge for the next catastrophe, then that might help explain Hitler's strange trip to Hendaye in 1940. It might also explain the numerous towns dotting the Andes that are occupied by German nationals. They have been moving to Argentina, Peru, and Bolivia since the end of World War II. Maybe Hitler's visit to Henday in 1940 wasn't really about an alliance with Franco. Maybe it was to confirm what the cross was saying. The politics of the apocalypse were then shifting towards Germany. Maybe this little trip to the south of France actually paved the road for the Germans to begin moving to the Andes. Maybe they know something that the rest of us do not, at least until now. So that's the end of chapter 9 and that section. And there's a famous story of an Inca guy who is pestered by his wife because he doesn't have any money. And she's always saying, "Why don't you have money? Why don't you have money?" And he never really answers her. And then one night she's in bed sleeping and he comes into the bedroom and he wakes her up. And he says, "Hey, come on, I'll show you something." So she follows him up into the mountains at night and they go into a cave that she's never seen before. And he has a torch and they enter the cave, and the cave is filled with gold and diamonds and silver. And I mean, $1 billion worth of stuff. And he looks at her and says, "I just want you to know that I do have all the money in the world. I just don't spend it." And so that's really the story. There's all of this wealth buried in the Andes somewhere, and we may never find it. Of course, it could have been found and taken, surreptitiously, I guess. But the Andes remain the most fascinating place, one of the most fascinating places on Earth. And as you know, I was instrumental in finding the mummy at Nazca a few years back. It's a very strange mummy of a three-fingered, I don't know what, humanoid. It was definitely human. So anyway, that's it. I'm Jay Widener. This is Reality Check. Thank you for watching. Tell your friends, hit like and subscribe, and I have more to read, so I will be back. Thanks for watching.